Sorry, I was supposed to be on loop. Good morning, good morning, good morning, y'all. I hope your day is off to a good start. Mine certainly is. The weather is absolutely getting better. It's getting better. It's not still where I need it to be. If it's not 80 degrees for me, it ain't hot. So, yeah. And I'm a summer person. I love the summer. I love the warmth on my skin. And so I don't know how I've made it in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania this long, but I've made it. And it's Monday. It's Mondays with Muffy. And thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing this space with me. I'm hoping to get your week started off right as I do my own. So let's get to it. What were y'all doing this weekend? Tell me in the comments. Say good morning in the comments. Let me know what your weekend was like. This weekend was pretty much a boring ass weekend. That's what I can say. It was a boring ass weekend. I have another hat for y'all. Wait, let me turn my hat on. I got to turn it on. Let me see if it's going to. I got another hat for y'all, and I'm going to tell y'all why in a second, why I have a hat for y'all. But yeah, this weekend was just really boring. But I did get some things accomplished, and we're going to talk a little bit about what I got accomplished. But first, I have to start the day off by saying happy birthday to my best friend. So, well, one of my best friends, my good girlfriend. Happy birthday, girl, Mrs. Kira Washington. Happy birthday. So, I'm not going to sing a happy birthday. Well, I could sing happy birthday. No, we ain't going to do that. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. She is not for that. Even though I can sing, but today is not the day. But today is the day. It is April 22nd. It is a full moon in Scorpio, and it is Kira Washington's birthday. So I want to say special shout outs and happy birthday to my good girlfriend. And that's actually going to get us started off today because I'm going to talk a little bit about making friends. I'm going to say making friends after 40, but I made most of my good girlfriends that I have now later in life. And there was a time period when I was like, yo, am I never going to have any like really good girlfriends? I had one friend growing up, and then it just seemed like we drifted apart. And then I had to go out and make friends. And most of my girlfriends that I made them later in life. I made them after the age of 35. And it wasn't a struggle though. Now that I think back on it, like it was just really people who drifted into my life that I had synergy with. and just over time just develop really great bonds with. But I know later in life, when your life is busy, when all the things are happening and you're trying to gain relationships, it can be difficult when you're trying to raise your kids and sustain relationships and take care of your household and go to work and all those different things. It can be really difficult to sustain relationships, no less if you are a person who does not have friends at that age, or didn't grow up. Maybe you grew up with your friends and you didn't keep your friends, and then having to start all over is very, very difficult. So that's why I really cherish and honor my good girlfriends. And I want to send a beautiful happy birthday shout out to my girl Kira Washington. I hope you have the most wonderful, beautiful, awesome day. um and so, what about y'all? Did you make friends later in life? Are you one of those people who didn't sustain your childhood friendships and then had to jump back into the friendship making game? Um, and how did you do it? Like, were you able to? Did you meet people? Did you actually go out and intentionally meet people? Were these people that were drawn to you? I will say that my bestest friend, I became her friend because we were actually married. Well, we were married. We were both integrated. Let me put it like that. We were integrated into a family at a similar, well, she was before me, but I became integrated into the family and then I got to know her. And then we just kind of stuck like glue. And then my other girlfriend, we had known each other for years. And then we just kind of like, I don't know, we gravitated towards each other at one point. But it was not, I can't say it was the easiest thing in the world, because I feel like the older you get, when you're trying to make girlfriends, you for well, this is for me, and I am an introvert. Most people don't believe that I'm an introvert, but I always tell people I do this very well. But when we're in person, I am way more reserved and I'm way more paying attention, observant than when I'm doing this. But I'm not the type of person that's just like going to jump into friendships. I'm absolutely the type of person who is more so like trying to make sure this is a good fit before I jump into it. And so it was not easy for me, because I'm also not a person who's like out with the crowd all the time. So I'm not really looking or searching for friendships. So it kind of has to be very organic for me. So as I got older, it became more difficult, absolutely, to like go out and be like, oh, I want to make friends, especially when I don't have a reason necessarily. Well, besides running brown mamas, so I guess that could be part of it too. But surprise, surprise, most of my relationships were not as a result of, most of my close friendships that I have today are not as a result of brown mamas. They're just as a result of being in a certain place at a certain time, with a certain person, and then really just, recognizing that this was somebody that I wanted to spend more time with and who wanted to spend more time with me. So, that's how I went. But this weekend was a really boring weekend for me. I mostly just did a whole bunch of like spring cleaning. I cleaned out my room, realized I had a whole bunch of stuff that I did not, just a whole bunch of clothes. Raise your hand if you are amongst those people that has a ton of clothes that you do not wear. So what happened actually was, there came a point, you got to switch over your spring wardrobe to from your fall wardrobe or your winter wardrobe to your spring summer wardrobe. So I went to go do that. And then I had washed all of my clothes, and like all the clothes that I normally wear in a basket. And then I realized that all of the clothes that I normally wore were in those two baskets, and all the other stuff was just stuff that I just don't ever put on. And I realized like that I might be a baby hoarder when it comes to like my clothing and stuff. And so I was just like, I got to do something about this. So when I pulled out all the spring summer stuff, I was like, I got to be very intentional with like getting rid of some stuff and putting some stuff to the side to really ask myself some real questions about it later on down the line. And I think it can be really difficult to part with your pieces, especially for me. I grew up not having a ton of variety of clothing. So even just looking in my closet every day and seeing that I have options actually makes me feel really good about myself. But I had to really recognize that that was like not necessarily the best mindset to be in when it comes to like your clothing and stuff, because otherwise you start just holding on to stuff for no reason. And I realized I was holding on to stuff for absolutely no reason, because some of the clothes I couldn't fit, some of the clothes I'm like, you've tried that on several times and you're never going to wear that outside. So when are we actually just going to let it go? And that's actually how I found this little, because I wore this one time and then I never wore it again. And so I was like, I'm putting this on tomorrow for my people when I go live for Mondays with Muffy. And so yeah, it was just, what else did I do this weekend? Oh, so over the last few weeks, me and my husband have been rewatching Game of Thrones, because you know that the new Game of Thrones is coming on in June. And so we made it to the end this weekend. And you know what? The thing about the Khaleesi is she really was bad the whole time. Like, we thought she was good, but she really was actually bad. And when I watched it back, I was like, she was not a good person. And she really felt like because really the point of it was like she felt like all these people had felt like they were entitled to the throne only because of who the people, just who their people were. It wasn't because they were good rulers. It wasn't because they had good hearts. It wasn't because they were like kind or like wanted to, you know, actually help the people. They just literally decided my mama or my papa was on the throne. I want the throne, and I'm going to kill, steal, rob whomever in order for me to get it. And so it was just really interesting watching the whole series back with, because the first time I watched Game of Thrones, I was just enamored by the story. And actually, at the end, he said that the imp had said, he was like, the most powerful thing in the world is a story. And I'm thinking, like, all of these people that were on the throne, like, they didn't even really have great stories. They were just on the throne because they mama or papa was on the throne. And so it was really interesting to watch it back and to recognize that, like, yeah, the Khaleesi was not good. She wasn't good from the very beginning. I mean, all her people was bad. Her brother was crazy, and then she just basically went around liberating people, but really that was code word for killing people. So it was just really interesting to watch it back and be like, we need to look at this with new eyes. And then the saddest of the sad part, which I think everybody got that when they watched Game of Thrones the first time, was like Jon Snow, and the fact that, like, this dude put his whole life on the line for everybody, and they still hated him at the end. How, Sway? This, they wouldn't even have knew about the White Walkers if it wasn't for Jon Snow going up in there and being like, "Yo, we got to do something about this." And then how many times they didn't kill this man? Mm-mm. So we watched that back, and we did spring cleaning, and we cleaned out the garage. Look, we still got spring cleaning to do. So it was a pretty boring weekend, but nonetheless, it was a productive weekend because I still have a ton of spring cleaning to do. So, well, I won't be doing spring cleaning next weekend, but I will be resuming in at least a week. So, shout out to all the clothes that is going to the Goodwill. Well, I'm going to try to find, I'm going to post in the Brown Mamas group because I got a ton of clothes. So I'm going to post in the Brown Mamas group and see if anybody wants them, because I need to give them away. Um, so yeah, that's that. And so I want to get into talking about a little bit of pop culture. And originally I was not going to talk about this, but I was like, I feel like this is a good conversation to be had. Mostly because I want to answer the question, and I want you to answer the question, when should you just shut up? Like, when should you just zip it? Don't say nothing. Let the story speak for itself. Let the circumstances speak for themselves and just move on. I don't know if y'all have been following the Wendy Williams story. Well, everybody followed it because everybody watched that documentary and seen the crazy stuff that was going on in her life. If you watched earlier this, I think it was on Friday or Saturday, Wendy Williams' husband came out and basically was cussing everybody out on social media, talking about nobody knows what's happening. He wants his spousal support, and he's supporting his family, all of his family members, calling out women, calling out everybody on the social media. Um, Let me see. I might play it for y'all. Let me see if I still have it. Yes, I have it. I'm gonna play it for y'all. And then we're just gonna chat about it real quick. And y'all gonna tell me what you think. Do you think that you should say, like, should he just be quiet? But I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna share it with y'all. But I'm only playing a snippet of this. Like, I'm not playing the whole thing.
Out there for all the people that just don't look. First of all, no, I cannot go save Wendy. Only Wendy can save Wendy. Okay, I told y'all 3 years ago this is a disease. Okay, alcoholism is a disease. There's other diseases involved. Without getting into personal, like this is something when it comes down to it,
I'm gonna fast
and
forward.
women on my page are going to be very mad. But for the smart people who understand the plight of, I'm not trying to play victim. Again, I take full accountability. A lot of y'all still don't know what's going on, and you still won't know what's going on. And as per the documentary that you just saw, which was whatever, I knew nothing about it. You still don't know what's going on.
And guess what? There was nothing good that came out of that. Nothing good came out of the documentary.
So when I watched it back, I was just, it's not that I was taken aback because this man has clearly lost all of his livelihood once Wendy Williams lost her money. And so I understand being upset. I understand being frustrated that all this information is coming out. But the question I keep asking myself is, where was this energy when this first happened, when y'all first got the divorce and you knew she was over there drinking and you knew she was over there throwing her life away? Like, where was that energy then? Why was there no public cry out then? And I think this whole Wendy Williams thing is really showing me, like, you got to be careful who is in your circle, because there were clearly a ton of people around this woman that were just enabling the heck out of her, including her husband. Because really, that's the energy you should have had when she was out here drinking and out here talking bad about the people and heaping these coals on her own head. That's when you should have really had that energy. That's when that energy should have been palpable. But now, because you feel like you're being affected on a high level, you're popping off on social media. And I think really, I don't know if y'all listened to the conversation that I had with DJ Nate last week. I left that conversation so inspired and so honored to have had a man be so vulnerable, to have had a man be so open to sharing his story. And I think this is the antithesis of that. Like, as one of the most interesting things to me about what's happening in the black male arena right now is how open black men are to talking in public spheres about black women, and how it almost seems as if, which I know it's not 100% true, but it almost seems as if black men are the only races of men who are willing to get out and consistently down talk and bad talk black women all the time. And I feel like, personally, if it were me and I was in Wendy Williams' space and shoes, what I would want from my significant other, former significant other, man I've spent 20 plus years with, is to just sit down and be quiet. Unless you are advocating for me in some way, just sit down and be quiet. Let's handle this behind closed doors. Let's not air our dirty laundry in public spaces and spheres. And I feel like for some reason, our men, not all of our men, but some of our men, because I don't think my husband would do this, but I think some of our men are way too excited to hop out into public spheres and speak ill of black women. In that same video, he called out Black China for enabling Wendy Williams. And I'm not sure if she has or if she hasn't. Like, that's none of my business. But at the same time, it's like, why do you have to do this in a public sphere? Like, and he'd already said, he felt like the documentary didn't do any good for, didn't do any good for Wendy Williams. So if you don't feel like these public, announcements and initiations of more information is good for her, then why are you doing it? Why don't you just be quiet? I'm convinced that that's mama trauma that they haven't healed with their mamas. I agree. I agree because it's gotten to the point where it's like almost every every 2 or 3 weeks there's another black man popping up on social media, on YouTube, on television talking bad about black women. And I feel like we have to get to some point where it's like, don't you understand that you are destroying the self-esteem, the value and worth of not just black women but black girls? And he said out of his own mouth, he said, I'm doing this for my daughter. You could not possibly. He said, my daughter's watching, my son's watching, my lady's watching. Well, if your lady and your daughter are watching, you should probably shut up. Like, because the strength of a man, in my opinion, is his self-control, is his ability to rein us in when things have gotten out of control, not as, the supreme blaster of all nonsense. And so it's just really interesting to me that I feel like every few weeks, and I will say it is very likely that the media is also pushing this narrative, making those voices louder than other voices. But I also think that there's just this thing where our men become emboldened and feel like the and feel they have to place blame on us rather than looking internally, rather than checking their own feelings, rather than deciding, to delay judgment. Because to me, that's always the best thing to do, is just to delay judgment and to say, let me see what this looks like a year from now. Let me see what this looks like 5, 10 years from now before I cast judgment on it. And I think it's just really disheartening that these types of things continue to happen over and over and over again. And so I wanted to talk about it because I was just like, this is getting ridiculous. I don't know what the solution is. I can't say that I know what the solution is other than to really just raise sons that have self-control, and also raise sons that understand that we are a unit, that black men and black women are a unit, and we should be working together, and that we should not be airing our dirty laundry in public when unnecessary, unless it's about truth telling, unless it's about shining a light on things that are harmful to us. But other than that, we really should be trying to handle things amongst ourselves. So tell me if you feel like Kevin Hunter was in the wrong, and black men in general. How do you feel about, as a black woman, if you're watching this, how do you feel about knowing that oftentimes it is our brothers who are the ones who are, out in public airing our dirty laundry? So now that that's over, just to let y'all know, we are going to be talking with Kimani Norrington-Sands, who is the founder of, I don't know what she's the founder of, but what I know is that she's going to be talking to us about Black women in corporate America. And she is having a summit coming up for Black women in corporate America. But before we get to that, tomorrow is election day. So I don't know if y'all know this, but tomorrow is election day. I hope you are registered to vote by now. And we're going to be voting for quite a few offices here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and everywhere. And so I wanted to talk to y'all a little bit about some of the Black women who are running for office. So if you are planning to vote tomorrow and you're not quite sure who's on the ballot, I just want to let you know some of the Black women that are on the ballot for tomorrow. You can look for their names when you go vote, and you can check a box for them. And these are all Black. So this is what I say about politics, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm all up in it, because I'm not. I'm not a fan of politics, to be honest with you. However, I find my trusted sources. People who I know do their due diligence, people who I know and trust their information, and I know has similar perspectives as me. And I try my best to stalk them and know who they're voting for. And then I look and see who they're voting for. And then I go check it out and say, oh, does this person's values align with mine? And if they do, that's who I'm voting for. So you don't always have to be, a lot of times politics can be intimidating for folks because they feel like they got to be reading the New York Times every day to know who's running for politics. Now, I'm a person who reads the news every day. I read the Associated Press, the Washington Post, pretty much every single day. However, I don't always like reading what's going on in politics. I read international news, I read local news, I read domestic news, but when it comes to reading the political mess, I don't always like reading that part. So sometimes I just leave that to its own devices, and I find my people who I trust. So there are a couple of sisters that I learned about that I actually do trust from a trusted source. And so want to make you aware that Representative Latasha Mays is running in the 24th Legislative District, so you can look for her name if you are in that district and you are going to be voting. I want to make you aware that Ashley Comans is running for PA State Representative, so you can look for her name on the ballot. Ashley Comans is running for PA State Representative. Let me see, where is she actually running? Is that a specific district? District 34 for state representative. You can also look and vote for Representative Summer Lee. She's running for Congress, I believe. So you can vote for her. You can also vote for Lindsay Powell for state representative. She is in district. Let me see, does it say here? I'm on her Facebook page trying to see what district she's in. State Representative Lindsay Powell. It doesn't say. All right, but you can find her at lindsaypowellforpa.com. So I want to tell you again who those women are that you can look for their names on the ballot. You can look for Representative Latasha Mays. You can look for State Representative Ashley Comans. You can look for Representative Summer Lee. You can look for Representative Lindsay Powell when you go to the polls tomorrow. So we are voting tomorrow, April 23rd. If you are in any of those districts, you may want to vote for a sister. So make sure you make your way to the polls tomorrow. Do it before you go to work. Do it after you come to work, go to work. Just make sure that you do it, because at the end of the day, we have some very, very interesting things. Oh yeah, we did talk about that, Shannon. We did talk about that. So let's talk about that. We discussed this, but I truly believe we as community should be choosing our representatives rather than people telling us that they are the best person to represent us moving forward. Absolutely. I agree. So, but my thing is right now, just make sure you get out and vote. And then also just recognizing this election is going to be a really important election because we have some really serious issues happening in our country, whether we're talking about abortion, whether we're talking about maternal health, whether we're talking about what's going on in Israel right now. Make sure you check people's track records, because I don't know if y'all are following what happened at Columbia University this past weekend, but there is some serious censorship going on in our country, and we need to be voting for folks who are going to stand up for our right to tell the truth, to be truthful in our lives, to defend humanity. And right now, I feel like that's just not happening in our country. In our country, we do not have representatives or political representatives that are respecting our right to tell the truth, that are respecting our right to humanity and to defend humanity. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm not interested in living a life where my humanity as an American is the only humanity that's respected. I feel like it is important that we respect the humanities of humans all over the world, and that we really honor life all over the world. And we have so many things happening outside of our country and in our country that we need to be showing up to these polls to vote. So if you are under the sound of my voice and you are going to be voting tomorrow, make sure you look for the sisters on the ballot. Again, Representative Latasha Mays, Representative Summer Lee, Representative Ashley Coleman, Representative Lindsay Powell are the ones that I know of, that I know ideologically, for the most part, I agree with. So make sure you look for them. And we are getting ready to get into our interview segment of this show. So let's go ahead and I'm going to read a little bit and help y'all understand some things. So the the interview that I'm going to be doing today for our In the Deep session is about Black women in corporate America. So did you know that 49% of Black women feel that their race or ethnicity will make it harder for them to get a raise, promotion, or chance to get ahead? More than a quarter of Black women say their race has led them to missing out on an opportunity to advance. Black women are less likely to report that their managers check in on their well-being or help them balance priorities and deadlines. And Black women are leaving corporate America at a rate faster than any other demographic. And so I actually have been following Kimani for a while because I follow her newsletter on LinkedIn. And one of the reasons I started following it is because I've been doing a lot of speaking for Black employee resource groups. And so I started doing a lot of research on Black women in corporate America and just finding that Black women are not happy in corporate America. And this is a lot of what I'm hearing from just Black women in corporate America when talking to Black women at different companies. And so I was like, I need to bring this sister on. And then I seen that she was doing a summit. She is hosting let me bring my notes back up. She is hosting the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women on May 18th and the 19th. And she is going to be providing some solutions for sisters who are ready to make that move. So welcome to the stage, Dr. Kimani Norrington-Sands. Hey, sis. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
No problem. Thank you for being courageous enough to say all the things on LinkedIn because I'm sure that it's not easy. I'm not sure what type of responses you get, but I know I'm reading your newsletter and I know I'm finding it. I've never been in corporate. Well, let me not say I've never. I spent a very small stint in corporate America as a young woman and immediately knew it was not the place for she. I was like, she cannot be in this space. This is not going to do for me. So the first question I want to just ask you is why do you think what are Black women running away from in corporate America?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, it's a number of things. So I'm Dr. Kimani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And the way I'm able to have these conversations is that I'm a toxic job survivor. So a lot of what I'm talking about is informed by my own experiences, but I'm also a psychologist and a coach. So I work with Black women. So I've heard from many of them. And then on my YouTube channel, Lifting Up Through Climb Consulting Wellness Services, I started talking about my own healing journey in a toxic job. And that's how I learned about the experiences of so many Black women. So the experiences that we're talking about today about Black women in corporate America, very similar for Black women across professions around the world. There are a lot of parallel experiences because of issues of racism and sexism. So we can't outrun that. But I think what's so significant about what you said, Muffy, is when you went into that environment, you were like, this is not the place for me. Some Black women, a number of Black women go into corporate America because that's something they really wanted to do, right? So whatever the aspiration was, they really wanted to do that. So they get in the environment. It may not be what they wanted. They see the red flags, the writing on the wall, all that kind of stuff. But because they're so invested in the job title or they've worked so hard to be there, they're not leaving. And then when you think about the social programming for us as Black women that we fight, we know that we have to work twice as hard to get half as much, right? So we already know these things. So we come into the workplace like, okay, I got this. They're not gonna run me out of here. Then we start lying to ourselves. So that, and then the environment is gaslighting us on so many levels. And then we start self-gaslighting ourselves. So then we stay in these environments and then we buy into the lie that job is the only place where we can make money. So now we have this fear mentality that I cannot leave because if I leave, then I won't be able to pay my bills and I'll be homeless, right? You hear my voice, like that fear comes up. And then people around us, a lot of times, start projecting their fears on us. Girl, that's a good job. Don't leave that job. What about your benefits? So then we end up staying and then we experience significant physical and psychological harm. So what you did is commendable. You said, this is not working for me, and you pivoted out. but I think so many Black women feel stuck in toxic jobs, corporate or non-corporate, just stuck. And so then that motivated me and my co-host, Marissa Price, to develop the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women to help you get unstuck, right? To help you come up with a plan to get out of a toxic job. Not that you would leave tomorrow, the next day. It's based upon your timeline about when you want to go. And we also know that as Black women that we are very mindful of people getting our business and trying to sabotage us and all the other kind of stuff.
Right.
So with the summit, we've made sure that no participants will be on camera, names will not be listed, so privacy is upheld. Only the speakers will be on camera. If people want to say something, they can change their name on the platform, but we're providing an opportunity for us to plan and get ready based upon whenever you want to go and how to replace your income, because that's the biggest thing that keeps us at a toxic job.
Right. And I love that you talked about the self gaslighting because I hear that
Mm-hmm.
as I've been an entrepreneur for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And Black women will come to me that are in corporate America and be like, well, how did you do that? Um,
Mm-hmm.
how were you able to pay your bills? And I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
it's really just a matter of presenting a solution to people that is a solution and they're going to
Exactly.
buy in because it's a solution for them.
Yes.
But just the whole gamut of things that I've heard from Black women, I won't be able to pay my bills. What are
Mm-hmm.
people going to think about me quitting this
Mm-hmm.
good job?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I oftentimes when I hear these things from them, I'm like, do you realize that we live in a country of abundance?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't live in a country of scarcity. We live in a country of excess. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always a little bit more for someone. How
Mm-hmm.
do you, Dr. Kamani, when women come to you with this self-gaslighting, what are some of the
Mm-hmm.
responses that you give them to kind of shake them up and get them out of that self-limiting belief system?
Yeah, well, first I validate their experience. So it's important to be validated. Like I understand what you're feeling, and I understand what's going on. So reality testing with them, so
Mhm.
they know they are not the problem. The system is the problem. And when you think about being in the job, it's not just one or two supervisors. So don't think, oh, I'm gonna get this person, whatever. It's the whole system, because the whole system knows that that supervisor or supervisors are toxic. So it's the whole system. So when you start seeing those things and you're like, oh, I'm going to fight, I'm going to stick it out, I'm going to fight them, you are the biggest loser because
Mm.
it's rigged against you, right? So the validation, the reality testing, and then I've talked to them about, okay, let's talk about the fears. You have to confront the fears, because if you don't confront the fears, the fears have you in a chokehold, right? So let's talk about what are the fears, and let's break down. Okay, so what data supports that fear? So if you have a
Mhm.
fear, oh, I won't be able to make money. Okay, were you able to get this job? Yeah. Were you able to get another job? Oh, yeah. Were you able to get, okay, so that's the data that supports it. If you want to get another job, you can get another job.
Right.
Okay. Now, what other data says that there's no other place for you to make money, right? So you just talked about that. So if you want to create your own business, or you want to have a side hustle, or there's so many opportunities available for you. That's what we're going to talk about in the summit, about what are the ways how to replace your income. Because if that's going to keep you staying there, we need to work on addressing that, right? The other thing is how much of your identity is tied into your job title, or
Mhm.
what people think of you, or the golden handcuffs. This is some good money, right? I've never made this before, all that kind of stuff, right? Reputation. So let's address the golden handcuffs. And also let's look at, and I'm quoting Stephanie Perry, who's on YouTube as well. She said, a job is not a good job if it's killing you. And if you're accessing the so-called good healthcare benefits because a job is making you sick, your blood pressure, your hair falling out,
That part.
you can't sleep, uh, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're crying on your way to work, you talk about the job all the time. So now it's affecting the quality of your life and maybe the quantity of your life, because we've seen Black women dying,
Mhm.
particularly those in high profile positions. So we've seen them dying. And so we have to be very mindful of that. And I think we've had a huge wake up call with the death of Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Kindia Bailey in terms of workplace bullying and how far it can go when you get no support. So
Mm.
we have to take that extremely seriously, and that our self-preservation comes before a job title, reputation, anything like that, because a job title is what you do to make money. It's not who you are. That is not who you are.
Absolutely.
Whatever skills and talents you brought into that job, you could take it somewhere else. So it's not the end all be all. And somebody, what they think of you, they're not living your life. You're waking up every day dreading going to your job, or Sunday you're mortified at the thought you got to go back to job tomorrow. Who's living that life? You
Right.
are. So you have to decide, is this the life that I want for myself? And number two, that there is another way out. And three, am I going to be courageous enough to make those moves and plan to get out? I don't tell any Black woman just up and leave a job and everything gonna be okay. I
Right.
never say that unless you're in immediate danger, physically and or psychologically. You're about to have a nervous breakdown. No, you got to go. Okay. But if you're not, let's start thinking about what is your plan to prepare yourself, no matter when you want to go. What is your plan to get out and save yourself so that you're ready to go and you're able to replace your income?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for bringing up Dr. Bailey, because I think I wanted to ask a question about what's happening in DEI right now. Like, we
Mhm.
know affirmative action was struck down, and then this organization, this Republican right wing organization that's going around and suing all of these
Mhm.
companies that have
Mhm.
DEI focused missions.
Mhm.
And we know that that is having a profound effect, especially when we thought we were getting somewhere during the pandemic with all
Mhm.
these corporations creating, super focused ERGs that were focusing on the issues of Black folks and allowing Black
Mhm.
folks safe spaces and
Mhm.
downtime and all those things. And now we're seeing an immediate and frightening repeal of those things. How is
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
affecting Black women in the workplace?
Oh, many, many ways. So, my Spelman sister has a platform called Stop Playing Diversity. So she calls out a lot what we've seen in
What's it
2020
called
in terms
again?
Stop Playing Diversity.
Okay.
So she has a business, and she focuses on that issue. So she's very vocal on social media, particularly X or Twitter. So she talks a lot about that. I've had her on my channel a number of times. I have panels on my channel talking about Stop Playing Diversity. So in terms of the performative DEI gestures, and not it's not true transformative
Mhm.
diversity work, right? And so it's kind of like they're playing in our face. So let's play in our face, and let's make them think that everything's okay, but let's play nice to kind of get all the heat off of us. But in that process, many Black women become extremely disillusioned. And often what happens is that we're pulled into these DEI roles and gassed up and made to feel like, oh, you're going to do all these other things, which ties into Pets a Threat. So, Pets a Threat, if your listeners don't know about Pets a Threat, Pets a Threat deals with when a Black woman comes to the workplace. But let me give the Black women credit who created Pets a Threat. So, three Black women researchers created Pets a Threat, the research. So, Pets a Threat, created by Dr. Juanita Johnson Bailey, Dr. Keisha Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps. I say their name every time I talk about Pets a Threat because people try to steal their work and don't give them credit. Okay.
Mm.
So they've been on my channel, or three of them have been on my channel. No, sorry, two of them have been on my channel talking about Pets a Threat. So if you want to see more about Pets a Threat, go to my YouTube channel. But Pets a Threat deals with when a Black woman comes into the workplace and
Wow.
she's thought out, maybe she's already there, maybe they recruit her because of her outstanding abilities. They're like, oh, she's so smart. We love Muffy. She is so smart. She is really transforming this organization, right? So you're the pet because you're helping them out. You're getting all this attention. They're just gassing you up, all the kind of stuff. Then the Black woman starts outshining other people in the workplace. And there's a shift in terms of how she is seen and treated like a threat, just like that. Okay.
Mm.
So there might be the push out, there might be undermining, there might be the labeling, all the other kind of stuff. So that's what we're seeing a lot with DEI. The pet's a threat, then you come in, and then the glass cliff that you are brought into a situation that's almost like an impossible situation. You're brought in, and there's no real support for you. A lot of people in DEI talk about there's nobody else supporting me. I'm out here by myself. You're set up for failure. So then you might start internalizing, like, why are people not doing these things? Because they're already setting you up for failure. There's no true commitment to the work. There's no true backup with the work. It's just lip service. Let's just talk about it, but no real changes in policy, procedures, structures, levels of accountability. You're set up from the beginning.
And what I found is it a lot of times when you're talking about, DEI initiatives in
Mhm.
corporate America, they're talking about events.
Right.
They're not
Or book clubs,
or
right?
like a book club. And it's like, but that's not actually helping folks to have a more comfortable, work experience, to have a work
Mhm.
experience that's actually helping them to grow.
Well, you have to look at who are they prioritizing, who are they
Right,
centering. So they're centering white people or people who engage in white supremacist behaviors.
right.
So they could be black, they could be whatever, but they're still engaging in white supremacist behaviors. They're centering their comfort level. They don't want to rock the boat too much, right? So they're like, oh, let's do this. So they're centering their comfort. They don't care about our comfort. No, that's not the priority.
I've been asked very many times, like, is this going to be okay for everyone? And it's like, well, it's
Oh
kind of like, well,
gosh.
then why am I here? It
Right.
has to be okay for
This
everyone.
work, if it's good, if it's done well, you're not going to be comfortable.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then also wanted to talk just a little bit about your personal narrative. How has your personal narrative informed this work that you do? Like, what is your story?
Oh my God. We don't,
You
I
said, wait,
could be here.
we have time.
Right, exactly. I could be here for a long time. So I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
And if people are interested in learning more about my story, then absolutely go to my YouTube channel. I talk about a lot of what I've gone through. Again, my YouTube channel is Lifting Us We Climb Consulting Wellness Services.
It's called Lifting
And
As We Climb Consulting Services.
Lifting Us We Climb Consulting Wellness Services. And I've also been interviewed by a number of Black women. So I'm very vocal about what happened to me. I'm not ashamed about it because I didn't do anything wrong. Okay. So I think a lot of times when these things happen to us, we become shamed and, all that other kind of, I'm like, no, I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. So the reason that I'm so vocal about it is it's part of my healing journey. And when people try to silence you or humiliate you, that adds to the trauma of what you've experienced. So I've gone through workplace trauma, working for the second largest school district in the nation in the mental health unit, right? So the irony of that I'm tasked to help people and I'm being terrorized by a mental health unit by mental health professionals, okay?
Unfortunately, that's not abnormal.
Yeah, and by people who one person was white, but the majority of the people were not white. They weren't
Mm,
black either. But right, so you're like, oh well, it wasn't white. No, it was one white person, but the other people were not.
wow.
Um, and if you want to see again, Stephanie Perry did a really good interview with me about Black women leaving toxic jobs. So that's on her channel, Stephanie Perry's channel, Black women leaving toxic jobs. So I'll talk at length about what I went through, but just a Cliff Notes version. So I was working for the school district for 13 years, and I experienced pets a threat. So I've done videos talking about exactly what I went through. I went through pet to threat. When I went through pet to threat, now keep in mind when I was at the job, I had been promoted twice, put in leadership positions, never had a negative job evaluation, the whole thing. But when I dared to set boundaries about something, it quickly shifted to threat.
Mm,
And when that shifted to threat, I was demoted, not only demoted from the position I came from, I was demoted all the way down to my entry level position, right? So at that point, I was there for 11 years, but demoted back to my entry level position. And so many things that were done to me, disrespect, just no opportunities for me to grow. It was just a really miserable existence. And I developed a term that captured my experience. So I forgive myself or forgive me if it's jarring what I'm going to say. Okay. But it felt like psychological lynching. It felt like they
mm,
had gotten in my head and making me think you're nothing. You think this, we're going to put you in your place. Right. So that stuff. But then it was a sign to other people. You see her? You get out of place, you get, this is what's going to happen to you. So
Wow.
I was made an example of, and when that happened, many people pulled away from me. So I was really out there by myself, and just the humiliation and so many other things happened. Again, check out those other videos. I
Yeah, I'm
really,
definitely gonna be looking. Well, it's like we want to watch the train wreck, but it's also like as a Black woman in America, you kind of the story.
you know the story. It's
You know the
a
story.
little flavor different, right?
Mhm,
But what I highlight to Black women, not only my story, I want you to hear how it impacted me, right? So physically and psychologically, and to know I am a licensed clinical psychologist. Even before I came into the job, I was a licensed clinical psychologist. But to know that a mental health professional
right.
was brought down to that level, that I was experiencing significant physical and psychological symptoms. So my blood pressure was going up. I gained a lot of weight. I started having these really bad nosebleeds. Never had nosebleeds ever in my life. Really bad nosebleeds. My hair started falling out. My skin started breaking out. Waking up in like a panic when I was sleeping. Profound sadness. Didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. Alarm would go off, and I'd be like, oh my God. The Sunday scaries. Sunday would roll around 5 o'clock. I would be in dread, knowing I had to go back to the job again. So all those other symptoms, and then you know what else? The belief or the lie that I told myself that I needed to stay at that job to fight for the rights of Black students. I
You
had to
hear that?
fight, and they weren't going to run me out, and I was going to do all these things, and I got this. But I was being harmed, and there was no way I could win in a system that was rigged against me. There were so many people behind the scenes that were against me. I couldn't see it at the time. So it had to get to a certain point where my self-preservation was more important because I love myself too much to
Mhm.
stay in that situation. I know my worth. I knew that I was able to leave, so I took a leave of absence. And when I took that leave of absence, I started working with Black women coaches to help prepare myself. I immediately started replacing my income. I work with the Black woman financial psychologist, Dr. Roche Brown, who's going to be one of the speakers at the summit. So if the finances was my biggest thing that kept me at the job, I was like, I gotta address the financial issue because I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And once I made that plan, then I was able to resign.
And absolutely, Dr. Kamani, one of the things that's really interesting to me, and like I said, I had a very short stint in corporate America. But and one thing I'm clear to tell other black women when they ask me about it is like, no, it's not easy. It's
Mm-mm,
this,
it's not.
entrepreneurship is not something where you
Mm-hmm.
can just be like, this is what I'm doing tomorrow and it's all going to work out. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't work like that. But
right.
it is liberating. It is
Yes.
liberating to number one, when you do figure out that you can absolutely replace your income through
Mm-hmm. And
entrepreneurship
exceed it.
and exceed it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can
Mm-hmm.
exceed your income.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also liberating to realize that there is a part of America that does love us and that you are loved. You are loved by your people. You are loved by society as a whole, your children, your family. Like that job does not fully define who you are. It doesn't even
Mm-hmm.
partially, it doesn't even define a quarter of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're so
Mm-hmm.
much more and you can be so much more when you give yourself the time and the space.
Yeah,
So
and that you deserve better and that we have options. So part of the other reason that we stay is because of healthcare benefits, right? So I talked about that before, but we're going to talk about the summit about ways to get your healthcare benefits. That's not the only place you can get your healthcare benefits, your
it's your
retirement, all that other kind of stuff. But we have to dispel that. But the thing about it too that I want your listeners to know is that when you're in a toxic job, it impacts not only you, but your family and your friends
yes.
because you come home beat down, you're exhausted, you're talking about the job all the time. Everybody knows about your job. That's the only thing you really talk about. So they are being harmed too, watching you being beat down, humiliated. They don't know how to help you. So think about not only you, but also your family and friends are being harmed by seeing what you're experiencing as well.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Kamani, thank you so much for coming on with us and for telling us about the Job Liberation Summit. I have the link up here, jobliberation.heysummit.com. You can go to learn more and to be a part of the summit on May 18th and the 19th. Are there any final words that you'd like to leave us with, Dr. Kamani?
Yeah, so look at the summit as getting your plan together, getting ready. So again, based upon what your timeline is, it might be 6 months, a year, it might be more than that. But at least you will be prepared so that when you leave on your terms and you'll be good financially. So this is a resource for you. I'm trying to liberate as many Black women as I can from toxic jobs. So look at this as a resource. You need to register so you can get your ticket, right? So registration closes on May 17th.
All right, sis. Thank you so much for talking with us this morning. And y'all can find out more at the link below, jobliberation.heysummit.com. If you are working a toxic job, you do not have to be there. I am a living example. Dr. Kimani is a living example, and she is going to have tons of other Black women on her summit who are living examples that any toxicity that lives in your life, you can absolutely remove yourself from it. Thank you, sis. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. Peace.
Bye-bye.
I do want to remind y'all that this podcast is brought to you by Dollar Bank's Way Home Summit. Way Home, I said summit. It is not a summit. It is a home ownership workshop. So if you are a mama, a papa, a uncle, a auntie, pretty much anybody, if you are anyone and you need to go on ahead and get into home ownership, you have some credit issues, maybe you need help with your down payment, maybe you need just some advice and you're not sure how to go about this process and you are a little bit confused. On Saturday, May 11th at the David L. Lawrence Convention Center, Dollar Bank is going to be hosting their Way Home thing. It's called the Way Home. And you are going to be able to go on over there, and they have free childcare. They're serving you breakfast. They're going to have speakers that have been through the program before. I've been through the program. That's how me and my husband bought our first house, was through Dollar Bank's Way Home program. So I'm going to show y'all a little bit on their website just so you can know you are in good company. Y'all might even remember the workshop from back in the day, because it actually used to be called what was it called? Mortgages for Moms. Back in the day, it was called Mortgages for Moms. And so it's called the Way Home Buying Workshop now. But you can go on down to the workshop on Saturday, May 11th at the David L. Lawrence Convention Center. At 9 a.m., they are going to have childcare. They are going to have home ownership experts there. What they do through the Way Home workshop is that they help you get access to down payment and closing costs. You can actually receive up to $5,000 toward your down payment and closing costs. They also give you credit counseling and help you figure out what your credit score is. And then they also try to show you how to go ahead and boost your savings and cut your debt so that you can go ahead and buy your first home. Because we know that home ownership in this country, let's just keep it all the way real, y'all. In this country, if you don't own something, you have to own a piece of the American pie to matter. We are a nation of owners. And if you're not familiar with the foundings of this country, and if you don't understand that the colonies were actually colonial charters for companies, then you don't understand enough. You need to own something. Whether you own a business, whether you own a home, you need to own something to pass down to your children in order to start creating generational wealth for them, because the United States of America is really the United States of businesses and corporations. So head on down to the workshop on Saturday. If you need some Saturday, May 11th, not this Saturday, it's the Saturday of Mother's Day weekend. If you need some support in owning your own home, because you need to do that. You need to make sure you own something. So I'm going to start wrapping up this show by reminding y'all that if you are a person who is trying to make a change in your life today, if nothing changes, guess what, y'all? Nothing changes. When you've gotten to the point in your life where you know you are not living up to your fullest potential, where you know it is not enough, that what you're doing right now is not sustainable, and you know this is not how you want this thing to end. Whatever you're doing today, this is not how you want this thing to end. You know it's no longer a sustainable environment, and these people that you're around, this stuff that you're doing is not what you want to do. You can't just think about what you're going to do, y'all. you've actually got to change something. You can't just keep telling yourself and other people that you want to be different. You've got to actually do something different. You got to change the places you go. You got to start putting yourself on a bigger stage with different people in different places, because no amount of thinking different is actually going to make you different. You could think different all you want. It's not until you do something that you actually start the ball rolling towards the thing towards the thing that you want to make your life better. Listen, you got to tell yourself, you can't keep telling yourself these lies. You want something different. You want to make yourself feel better. You have to be better. And until you actually make the change, your life is going to stay the same. And yes, you can survive the change. The career will be different. It may take you a little while to learn the ropes. You might be single or lonely for a little while, but you ain't the first, and you surely ain't going to be the last. You might have to tell yourself no and be broke for a little while. But walking into your new home will prove that the change, while it was hard, was worth every tear, every night spent in the house, and every memory that you are going to make building generational wealth for your family. We can do difficult things, y'all. But first, we got to decide to stop lying to ourselves. We got to decide to take the next best step. We've got to decide that existing and surviving in a dying life is way more painful than breaking out of your shell and letting life hurt a little so you can actually start living. It was awesome talking to y'all on this Monday morning. I'm excited for next Monday and even more excited for the week that is ahead of you. Do something different this week, y'all. Make a small incremental change. One of the biggest mistakes we make as human beings is thinking that change is this grand thing. It happens in the flash. It's going to happen tomorrow. It's not. It's going to happen step by step, little by little, decision by decision, change by change. So get out there and make a difference in your own life this week. And I will see y'all next Monday. Peace.